Hi, this is Sarah Elger. Welcome to the Briefing Note podcast. Uh, there's an election coming imminently. Who knows? A day, 2 days, 2 months. It's anyone's guess. But in the meantime, behind the scenes, the inner workings of political parties are playing out right now, which is why I get to have one of those conversations in terms of someone who is actively running for the nomination, Amy Robichaud, in the riding of Vancouver Quadra. Hi, Amy.
Hi,
Hi, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited for our chat.
me too. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Really glad to be in conversation with you.
Yes, as I am with you. And I'm excited to have this conversation because this is playing out in real time right now. All of the workings of parties in order to get people to hold nominations and get candidates in ridings because this literally could happen at any time. So you're running in Vancouver Quadra. It is going to, at least, I'm going to say in air quotes, a contested nomination, because you're
Yeah,
not the only person hoping to win it. Wade Grant is another candidate. I'm not sure if there's anyone else, but I would.
there are three other women, so there's
Oh,
five of
wow.
us in total. Yeah.
Okay. So that is very contested, and you're running in what will become the former riding of Joyce Murray,
hmm
the longtime federal Liberal MP. And so she has won, at least in the last round, won that riding by almost 50. She took almost 50% of the vote, won it by a solid percentage, which is why there are so many of you hoping to get it.
Wow.
Tell me about your journey in deciding how to run in Vancouver or to try and get the nomination in Vancouver Quadra. And well, let's just start there.
Yeah, I absolutely will. I will say that I'll just make sure that we have all the cards on the table.
Yeah.
Petra Currett, Sarah Sadu, Mary Jane Bennett, Wade Grant, myself, Amy Robichaud, all running in this nomination. We are all in the same boat of internal party politics right now, waiting to find out if and when there'll be a nomination call, waiting to find out if all five of our names will be on the ballot or only some
Mhm.
of our names will be on the ballot. Waiting to find out if that nomination will be called before or after the election is called, and just all working to talk to as many of our neighbors as possible. And for me, my decision to step in to do this was threefold. One, I have been a Liberal volunteer and organizer. I've knocked on easily tens of thousands of doors for the Liberal Party over the last 2 decades. And so for me, when Joyce Murray announced that she wasn't going to be running again in my neighborhood, it was uh, a real easy decision to say I'd love to follow in her footsteps
Mhm.
because of who Joyce is and what she has done for this riding and how she has led in this riding. So I had the privilege of all my involvement in the party to know how hard she worked as a constituency MP and how much effort and organization she put into staying in touch in her community and to elevating the voices of Vancouver Quadra Liberals and everyone in Vancouver Quadra, into how much money she raised both for her riding and then just transferred into other ridings when they needed those funds to win, how generous she'd been with other women candidates all across the country. And so it was a really easy decision to say, I want to do that. I want to carry on
Mhm.
that legacy. It's going to be a hell of a lot harder to do if I get a chance to do it, but it was an easy decision to make to do that. And in fact, Joyce told me once, I asked her, I was at an event with her after she was Minister of Fisheries, and she was still back in the riding hosting a roundtable with small businesses. And I was invited to the roundtable. And I could tell she was exhausted and she was working so hard in cabinet and for Canadians and still hosting all of these riding level events. And I said, how are you doing it? Like, how are you balancing cabinet and still making it? And she said to me, Well, I believe if it's worth doing poorly. And
Mm,
essentially by meaning that like I am exhausted. I'm not sure I'm doing as good a job as I used to do before I was in cabinet, but it still matters and I still need to show up. Uh, that speaks really closely to my heart and to how I live my life. So reason one was wanting to follow in Joyce's footsteps, and then reason two is that my day job, my career has been in social impact work. I have led women's organizations here in Vancouver, Dress for Success Vancouver. I chaired the Dress for Success Canada Foundation, and helped them hire their first CEO. And now I run a national organization that works with newcomer and Indigenous mothers of young children who are facing the most extreme forms of social and economic isolation. But the bottom line there is I've spent my career working at that place where policy fails people and seeing really viscerally what that means when our government policies, even our best intentioned ones,
mhm,
still leave people out. And after decades of testing people as they fall through those gaps, it felt like for me, time and a calling to step into a role or try to step into a role where I get to help close those gaps instead of just catching the people who fall through them.
mm,
Um, and the third reason for me is I put my name forward on this is that I lead an organization that has this incredible team, both at a governance level and a staff level, and who don't need me. They are ready to, my colleague, who's my chief program and advocacy officer, is ready to take my job. And so it felt like putting my name forward for this means that I can elevate other women too in their careers. And so that
mm,
has been reason number three for me that, and is actually the thing that as we're going into, I mean, I've been campaigning for this for over a year now. As we go into these like long campaign periods and uncertainty that keeps me going, which is this isn't just about maybe an opportunity for me to do something I feel called to do, but it's an opportunity for me to create more space at the table for other women to do it too. And I think that is the one of the driving forces right now, because I can't say I wish the other four candidates to lose. I think they're great people, but I campaigning for it, not against them.
mm. Yeah. Well, and that's so good to hear because that reminds me of a conversation that I had where someone was like, "Oh, it's such a shame that multiple women are running against each other to win this nomination contest." And I was like, that is honestly a dream scenario where
Mm-hmm.
you have really exceptionally well qualified women from different walks of life, all competing against each other because, that even in itself wouldn't have happened likely even, 10 or 15 years ago.
No, and the men do it all the time, so we should
Yeah,
get to do
and
it too.
exactly, right? And so, this idea that, well, we can only have one woman go up against whoever else, right? It's like, well, no, we all know how this works. And, you know, let the best woman win,
Uh, Amen. From
right? Like,
yeah,
let's let let's go do this.
yeah, from your lips to the voters' ears. Absolutely.
I hope so. But yeah, because, and I do think that those conversations happen more often than not. We just don't hear about them where,
Yeah,
people are told, well, you should think about running somewhere else, or this person is, doing this, and, all of these different things, the things that we don't talk about but get said in politics. Um,
yeah. Well, and I think that's really true. And for me, what I find really important, particularly about Vancouver Quadra and this nomination is, I don't know the other candidates' motivations for running.
yeah,
Maybe some of them are running because it in this particular place because it is a quote unquote safe seat. I don't believe in safe seats. I mean, in January, the seat wasn't safe. It was one of,
yeah,
Joyce held on,
yeah.
Joyce held on to this riding by the skin of her teeth in 2011. It was one of two ridings the Liberals held in BC when we fell into, when we lost even official opposition and fell into third party status. Uh, and it was a conservative riding prior to that. So it's not it's definitely, I would say, a stronghold, but it's nothing's guaranteed.
Hmm.
And for me, this is so much less about whether or not this is a safe riding, and so much more about this is my community. This is
Right.
my neighborhood, and honestly, this is, if there's any footsteps I'd like to follow in, it is the one of the
It's
current MP there. And
right.
and I think there's so much to take about Joyce's approach to politics and to representative democracy that I want to see continue in Vancouver Quadra, because I think it's so important how she embodied this role for her constituents. But I also think there's such an opportunity, and this is my my CEO hat on, to package up some of those practices and export them to other ridings, to
Mhm.
be able to really dig into why was Joyce such an effective constituency MP? Why were the events and the ways of communicating and the cadence she set, why was that effective? A good part of it is obviously because she is her, but part of it is she's figured out a system, and I would love to figure out what that system is and see if it can work elsewhere, because we're all living in the same Canada right now, and it's a really scary time for our democracy and liberal democracies in general around the world. But I think ours in particular, living next door to America, which is feeling less and less like a liberal democracy every day. And anything we can do to be strengthening the backbone of our system, I think is really critical. And my belief is that backbone is the constituency engagement, the community building, and the knowing your neighbors by name as much as you can. And there's 120 ish thousand people in Vancouver Quadra. It's a lot, but it's not too many to not be able to be really intimate in terms of leadership. So,
Well, and I mean, how long did it take you to make the decision to try to run and try and win the nomination?
mm, uh, so it's a big choice. Like, I don't want to say, oh, it was easy, I just thought I'd do it. It's a big
Well, I
choice.
mean, there are a lot of
Yeah,
people who are like literally either from birth or from like, oh yeah,
right.
um,
So I've always known and felt that both representative democracy and partisan politics are really important. It's the reason I've
mhm,
been a volunteer in the Liberal Party and a registered Liberal member Liberal for over the last 2 decades. Um, so it wasn't always in the back of my mind that if there was an opportunity to contribute to my community through leadership in this way, would I like to do that? Yes. Um, would I have rather Joyce stayed on for another term? Also, yes.
mhm,
Um, or however long she wanted to. But when she announced her retirement, I had actually just decided, like I had just put in my notice at Dress for Success. I had accepted the role as CEO at Mothers Matter. It was really terrible timing for me to actually consider, do I now want to also pursue an elected office? I was, starting up with a new organization and team. Um, and I, the summer between those two jobs and before really deciding I was going to do this, I ended up hiking the West Coast Trail, or part of it, half of it, with a bunch of friends, some who were political, some who weren't. And over the course of those 5 nights, 6 nights, 6 days, 5 nights of being in the backcountry and hurting all the time, and having conversations, that was really when it solidified for me that yeah, it's hard and this is not the right timing, but this is the right opportunity.
right,
And I had so many conversations about why I do the work I do, in the nonprofit sector, and if I could expand that and take that to the next level, what would that look like? And for me, at the end of it, it just came down to, yeah, it would look like trying to close the gaps, and that means having a seat at the table, and not just working to either try to influence the people at the table or collect people who are falling through the gaps of the decisions they're making.
yeah.
And so that was it. And then that was really the choice. But I'd say it took me several weeks to really go from, hey, maybe this is the opportunity, to I'm all in.
Yeah.
Several weeks, and then 5 days of protein bars and rehydrated meals in the middle of the forest.
Of scrapes and bruises. Um, it's so interesting about, the doing the work that you do and seeing and identifying the gaps in the systems and as you very well said, with the best of intentions, that policies still, let people down. I think that's so important, um, because through your work of actually working with people who are impacted by policies and decisions and legislation and politics, um, that you want to transform that and be able to advocate and hopefully, be at the table so that those things don't happen again or happen differently. Um, I think honestly, that's so much of what I hope to see in politics, and the work of, like, what I hope I'm trying to put out into the world with Madam Premier is exactly, like, people like you are the people that we need, in order to better serve our communities.
That's a wonderful compliment, Sarah. Thank you. I I'm mindful of the sort of flippant answer to that comment would be like, yeah, we need less politicians and more people like me. But I am a politician. I am highly political. I've been a volunteer, an operative. I've sat on the national board of the Liberal Party. I've, knocked on doors. I've helped recruit candidates and sat with them while they're crying and sat with them while they're winning. And so I am a politician. I've never been an elected one, but I think politics uh, can and should be a place where people who have my motivation and your motivation get to thrive. And the reason I'm a partisan is because I don't, there are very few, if any, other organizations in Canada, like a political party, and I'll say in particular the Liberal Party, it's mine, um, that organize people across all demographics, across all provinces and territories, across all languages, across all backgrounds, into a collective project. And there's something really, as a somebody who works in social impact and an organizer, there's something really special about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I lean into. And politics will always have the egos and the power seekers, and that's inevitable, but that's also in every profession. What I see and have seen is that the more of us who come into it saying, this to me is about service, this to me is about collective impact, this to me is about effective organizing, um, that is incredibly powerful. And if there's anyone out there who's thinking, I haven't thought about partisan politics that way and I'd like to get involved, let me tell you a secret. It's like 2% of the Canadian population who are members of a political party. It's an incredibly small club that is free to join.
Mm-hmm.
And you can jump in and start doing the work and start being part of that organization. And it gives you this opportunity to think and influence and access and work in a way that nothing else does in this country. And I say that running a national or non-political organization too. So there's something really important about doing that. So I think the answer I'd say is thank you for that compliment. It means a lot to me. And to me, that is just the definition of a good politician.
Yeah,
Is somebody who's like using power to do those things.
I agree, obviously. I do. I really do feel that. And, to add on what you just said, I really think because, and maybe you can relate to this, I'm not sure. But, like, I didn't grow up in a political family. No one talked about politics. It was only thanks to an amazing teacher that I had, that introduced me to, like, politics and global affairs and different things. And and then when I was old enough to actually test out politics for myself, what I found is it's actually, um there the only barrier is your willingness to get involved, in
I think
terms of, you
there's
just
other
have
barriers, but that's the first
there
step.
are other
Yeah.
barriers, but literally, in my experience, if you have an interest and you're willing to say, oh, this is the party or the person that I want to help, if you show up and put your hand up, um you're
There'll be
in.
work for you to do and people will
Exactly.
welcome you into that room.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that is so true. And I relate a lot to that. I grew up in what I would say a very political family, but we weren't politically connected. So we talked about for an event um, and the importance of caring for people and society around the dinner table. But we also, struggled to make ends meet a lot of the time and relied on each other and our community and our extended family. I mean, I grew up in Calgary. I grew up in the oil and gas sector, boom and bust. Sometimes there was, no work and no money. And sometimes we felt really comfortable. And we relied on our neighbors coming together. We relied on services that the government could provide in order to have a sustainable livelihood, a good life. And I had a public school teacher, Mark Dahl at St. Matthew's Junior High, who was a debate coach and asked me to join the debate team, and that changed the trajectory of I could engage in this in more than just a personal level or a conversation with my family.
Mm.
And but also in a way that was about thoughtful impact and expanding our horizons, and made me want to go to Ottawa and find out what it looked like, which is why I
Mm.
did my university education there, and why I learned French or kept my French after immersion, and worked in the Senate, and really keyed in on this as a way to make change and make impact. Uh, and in doing that, it also led me to realize that there are a lot of barriers outside of just putting your hand up.
Yes.
And
Those come later.
those
Those come
come
later.
later, but also that there are people who want to work on those barriers with you. And
Yeah.
so, in 2018, I was elected the chair of the Liberals National Women's Commission, which was a very cool volunteer job to have because I got to be connected with women right across the country. But the big thing I wanted to do as chair, and that I was able to do, was lead the creation of a safe campaign. We call it safe campaign training, but really to lead the creation of bystander intervention and mental health training and the understanding of how do we create a safe environment for everybody who wants to put up their hand to come and volunteer
Mhm.
on campaigns and to have protection for those people. It's now mandatory. Every Liberal candidate, campaign manager, staffer, senior volunteer on a campaign has to take the training. And I hope that has made it easier for other young women like me who didn't come in with connections or people to look out for them to be able to come in and feel really welcomed and safe and cared for in a very intense environment, particularly during campaigns. And there's more to do, but for me, I look at why do I do this? Well, because that's already a huge win, and the generation coming up after me will get to benefit from that. And why am I running for office now? Well, because there's more women coming up behind me, and more people coming up behind me who've typically not been granted access or knew that they could have access to these spaces, and we need to make them better spaces.
100%. There's so many ways in which political systems at the party level, like in every way, still fail so many people, too many people. But it takes people with determination and courage, I think, to be willing to stand up in those very tricky spaces and say that this doesn't actually serve us. And in order to do something about this rather than just talk about it, we actually have to, put in the work.
And remember that the party, capital T, capital P,
Yes.
is
Yes.
actually just a collection of people. You
Yes.
put a large enough collection of people together, and we are the party. And it's something I've said a lot to young people on campaigns, younger people than me. I still self-identify as a young person, but getting less and less likely the more gray hair that comes in. Young people on campaigns is they're like, well, the party is going to do this, or the party is going to make that decision. And I always say, guys, we are the party. There's 20 of us here in this campaign office right now. What do we want to do on the ground? And when we make this decision, somebody else who's a volunteer walking off the door is going to be like, oh, well, the party decided this, not realizing that actually it was us 2 days ago. You get enough of us together and we can change the system. And I didn't invent that theory. That is feminist theory. That is organizational theory. That is community activist theory going back, decades and decades. but it's true. And it's also really hard. And so I oscillate between being really positive about that and recognizing that it still takes a lot of physical, emotional, and mental labor uh, to do that work. And funnily enough, as a woman who's doing this, I have a lot of other women and other people who are like, "Why are you doing this? It's so hard. Politics is so nasty." And do you know how hard it's going to be? And my response is, I mean, my day job is really hard. My literal job is to fix a system that doesn't work for people and help and make sure that those people get what they need in a system that's not working for them. I am really used to really hard work and long hours and like tough odds and frankly failing 9 times out of 10. So I'm not daunted by how hard this will be, but I am mindful of the fact that it is labor, and we need. I think what we need to make sure and ask any politician or anybody standing up for office or anything is like, are you ready for the labor of this?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not it's mostly not headshot and glad handing in speeches. It's
No,
mostly late night and blisters from knocking on doors and being exhausted because the stakes are actually really high and you have to address something before you can possibly sleep, and carrying um, other people's difficulties with you,
yeah,
um, and that's the job. And then trying to make good policy that both works broadly and specifically for people. Um, and it should be hard, but we also need to, I think, like really acknowledge that it is hard.
yeah. Well, I mean, politician as a job has, unfortunately, has such a bad reputation. Uh, for all kinds of different reasons. But, I maybe I'm crazy, but, when I encounter people who are cynical about politician as a career, I, I love sharing stories about the good politicians that I've worked with or have met or had the opportunity to get to know, and say, like, I'm really sorry that that's your experience. And, yeah, there definitely are in the world, people in it for not the right reasons, but there are a lot more who are in it for all the right ones. You just haven't had the opportunity to meet them yet.
Yeah, and we need more of them.
Yes,
So,
we
like,
do.
my motivation, hopefully, for talking with you today was, can I help convince more people, particularly young women, but also anybody who doesn't typically see themselves as a straight white male politician, to
Yeah,
stand up and say, I'll do some of the work, I'll get involved, because again, we are the party, and the more we do that, the more people who are in this to serve and to understand that the labor is real, and who aren't daunted by it, and also who aren't assuming that the shiny parts will make up for the labor. Because I've been doing this as a volunteer long enough to know that it actually doesn't. It
yeah,
doesn't compensate. Who are like who are go in with eyes wide open and said, like, I'm here to serve, and what can we do to make a better country on that,
yeah,
through that service. And I hope that I get a chance to do that. I hope that my neighbors in Vancouver Quadra who are registered liberals will lend me their trust and their vote to do that. But I
yeah,
also hope that they'll do more than that. I hope that regardless of the outcome on this, that everyone will take the message that I've been knocking on doors with and talking to people with, which is, we all have to do this work together. And that
yeah.
organizing piece and that stepping up piece happens at every single level, not just the putting your hand up to run for office.
Right. Well, and I mean, the political world is in a really interesting place. So Mark Carney is back in Canada today after his whirlwind trip yesterday to Europe,
Yep.
um, to I don't actually, he had some meetings, and
He's in a Iqaluit.
yes,
Um,
Nicole.
and I think I was watching the press conference before
Oh,
we
did you see
we
it?
connected for this. I didn't catch all of it, but I am so I think it means a lot that he made his first visit to the North and to
Right.
Iqaluit. And, he's talking about making major investments, not just in intelligence and military investments there, but in housing and in infrastructure. Because as the premier of Iqaluit said, it's strong, vibrant communities that create a safe and secure nation. And
Mm-hmm.
we think our housing crisis is tough here in Vancouver or
Oh,
anywhere in the South.
yes.
Uh, the North has it exponentially harder. So anyway, that's what he was doing today. I like.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's all of these choices that he's making right now, I hope, I believe, are made with great intention and discussion and thought. But as to when the election is actually called, remains, I think, of a bit of a mystery. I mean, it could happen like literally tomorrow. He could
Yeah.
drop it. So, have you given any consideration, or have you and the other candidates chatted about, what the party is thinking about doing in your riding
I
in terms
mean,
of how like this is going to run?
yeah, we honestly we don't have a lot of information on that as candidate. The riding association, who's got really beautiful, committed leadership inside and out, and the other candidate, we're all. I mean, we've been campaigning. Some of us for over a year, some of us for several months, but we've been campaigning and connecting with liberals, and so I know that all of us as candidates are really committed and want to see this nomination go to a vote of the liberals.
Right.
They've been the Vancouver Quadra liberals are very engaged and I think deserve to have their say in who the candidate's going to be.
Hmm.
I'm also like just a Democrat through and through, so like I want to see it go to a vote and for my neighbors to have a chance to express their vote as liberals. But we don't know anything about timing. We don't know anything about outcome. Um, and yeah, that is daunting. The idea that we're going to go straight, somebody is going to go straight from a
Right.
nomination
From
into
yes.
a campaign.
Yes.
I'm really fortunate that I've been a liberal and a volunteer for so long that I saw this writing on the wall. I've got a full campaign team ready to go. We can turn this over from the nomination to a general campaign that's fully staffed and ready to roll within. I think we have like an 8-hour runway, which is really great. But that's going to be really real, and we're going to go in very tired because we've been campaigning right up to the campaign, and we're going to campaign
Yeah.
again. That's going to be true for anybody here in Vancouver Quadra, and I think that this isn't like maybe an opportunity, if I can say that like I am really excited about Mark Carney's leadership as Prime Minister and as the Liberal leader right now and into this next election. And nobody's perfect. And I think that like this is caught, doing an election this quickly is causing a lot of work for our activists and our organizers on the ground.
Mhm.
It is labor, and I my hope is that is really appreciated and communicated out to
Mm.
our liberals as we move into an election. And I also think that like my day job is running a women's organization, so I'm deeply disappointed that we didn't have a minister of women and gender
Yes.
equality in cabinet. And my take on that is I feel like if there maybe I don't know who was sitting around the table advising Prime Minister Carney on what positions to put in cabinet, but I have a hunch that if we had had more women at that table too,
Mhm.
we would have seen, the Minister of Women and Gender Equality, Minister of Sport and Accessibility, and other ministers that signal our progressive values. We would have seen those titles included.
Right.
And this is why elections matter. And this is why candidates matter, because you want to build a team of members of parliament, a caucus that is diverse and willing to stand up to each other and for each other, and make all those decisions. Because I think Prime Minister Carney is an incredibly smart man. I've been able to have a couple of conversations with him, which is more than I think most liberals have right now. And he can't do it alone. He's going to have blind spots just like everyone else, and that's why a strong cabinet and a strong caucus and great candidates matter. I have never been the governor of a bank, or been to the World Economic Forum. I don't have that experience, but I do know what it feels like viscerally for Canadians to not have policies meet their needs,
Yeah,
and for people to be left out of the room. And I think, his team, the Liberal team, would benefit from having that experience in it too.
I agree. I completely agree. Yeah, I've had my own thoughts about, and I haven't articulated them because I'm still, I think, processing them around the lack of um, the portfolio for women.
Yeah.
But those are questions that I can't wait for him to be asked about. And if he does have the opportunity to lead the next government and stay on as prime minister after the general election, is that something that he is committed to doing?
I have no doubt about that. I have no real insight here, but the story I tell myself is that he's working in effectively a wartime cabinet. This was urgency. This was
Yeah.
getting the right people in place to go into an election that I think the Liberals, and for the sake of Canada, really need to win. And I think that this is just a matter of realizing that nobody's perfect. I think in this case, the urgent may have crowded out the important. And I think that um, if there had been another day or another 2 days to think about it, we would have seen a different outcome. I also think that if we had probably had I don't know the group, but again, I think if we had had more women in general, even 100% women around that table helping advise them on cabinet structures, we would have seen a different outcome. So I have no, I don't doubt the long term deep values commitment of Prime Minister Carney and the Liberals in terms of cabinet, and ensuring that we have ministers and departments that serve for a greater and more equal society and are actually actively taking on actions to increase that, because it's both the right thing to do and the smart thing to do for our economy and our communities. But I do think that in order to make sure we do that, we have to keep bringing diversity around the table. We have to make sure that everybody has a team, and that nobody does it alone. And
Yeah.
that's why government is not one guy or one gal. It is a group of voices. I also hope that we can maybe get back to, or work to build a parliament that is less gridlocked and does more effective work across the aisle with each other,
Mm,
and in committee. I think we've got a lot of work to do to get there, but we have to, because that's
yeah.
also part of like the health of our democracy, and protecting our liberal democracy from encroachment of authoritarian ideas, uh, or oligarchical ideas. We're I don't think we're at the same risk as the United States of having the oligarchs and Donald Trump in charge, but you know, it's not we're not immune to it. So we have to be really mindful to keep investing in our values and our institutions while we're defending those same values and institutions.
So if anyone is listening to this and resides in the riding of Vancouver Quadra and is already a registered liberal, how would people take part in supporting you?
They could go to my website, amyrobichaud.ca. They can sign up there to support me, let me know they're supporting me. They can make a donation. As you may have heard, I run a charity. I'm not independently wealthy. They can donate to the campaign, and then they can make sure that they show up and vote at the nomination meeting, which is likely to be very short notice. So I don't know, like keep your calendars clear for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, evenings or an afternoon,
Yeah,
possibly, just indefinitely, just on hold.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. Well, I really want to say I'm so happy to have this chat with you and to just, to get to know you a little bit better. But then also just even the idea of you, you know, trying to be to be the person in the room at the table. Um, that really makes me happy and excited about, not only the future of possibly politics in Vancouver Quadra and continuing on, what Joyce has done over so many years, but for, the future of Vancouver politics and federal politics, because, it's people like you who will change things.
I that thank you. That feels like a big responsibility, but one that I would be really privileged to hold.
Yeah.
Um, so thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Amy, and thanks for chatting with me. And I'm going to keep watching to see what happens in Vancouver Quadra, and see what happens in your race.
Thanks. Me
Yeah.
too.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks for chatting with me today.